because you ask not. If our grantees never said, let us borrow your space, it never would have occurred to us to loan them our space. If our grantees hadn't said, listen, we need you to help us leverage this grant, call 3 other foundations you know, get us some support, we never would have done it. We would have asked them for their annual report and been finished with the entire business. Our grantees pushed us by their proactive engagement, by their boldness, and frankly by their need to do more than what we thought we were able to do. We did it, and I think we have wonderful stories to show for it. So I'm finished and would love to hear any thoughts or questions that you might have on the subject of more than money. Any questions, any stories, any testimonies? Thank you, my dear. Anybody? Yes.
In hearing what you were saying that the sisterhood was doing, it reminded me of a program officer, Tara Seeley, at the CIC.
I just met her yesterday.
And that's what she's doing for us at Horizon House. I mean, we got a $25,000 fund from Eaton for a Latino program for this year to hire someone. The problem is, what do we do next year?
Okay.
She sat down with me and talked with me about networking and who I needed to contact and start developing these relationships. And she said, read the IBJ. And I said, we can't afford the IBJ.
Yeah.
And
But tell us what the IBJ is.
Indianapolis Business Journal.
Okay.
And so she said, I recycle mine. I'll give it to you.
Wow.
And so, I mean, it's just things like that that really has been very supportive.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm so glad. And so you asked and you got it. Great. Great. Somebody else with a question or an idea or an experience? Yes.
Have you set up any types of workshops to help others think out of the box? Because, I mean, those are outstanding ideas, but everybody doesn't think of that way.
Yeah, that's true. You know, we really haven't. We didn't really even talk to other funders about it. When we invited them to our Meet the Grantmakers, they were happy to come. I mean, they were just happy to come. They enjoyed it. They stayed late and spoke to our grantees. They were late for their next meeting because they were so happy to be there. We haven't talked about it. You know, we wrote a little about it in the chapter that's in your book, but we haven't talked about it, and that's the second time that question came up, so I'm glad you're saying it. Maybe there needs to be some way that we could informally or formally share thoughts with our colleagues in the field. But I think when grantees politely and strategically bring pressure to bear on the funders, I remember feeling so guilty by the rejections that we had to make, all 87, in my first time. That when I sent that letter and someone from one of those organizations called me and said, can I have 20 minutes of your time? I need to know how we can do better next time. And instead of just, saying, how can we do better next time, she said, listen, you can't do that, but can you do this or this or this for us? I felt so guilty, I just had to do it. But look, work these foundations, make them feel guilty if it's going to help you. Let them feel guilty. You rejected me and we needed you. Now do something for us. Got to do what's going to work. Somebody else with a thought or an idea. Larry.
Question about your own personal journey getting into the philanthropic sector. What were the imperatives that compelled you to end up at the sisterhood?
Thank you for that question. One of them is that I was raised in a religious home, in a Christian home. And I was taught early. My mom was the best Sunday school teacher I ever had today. My mom is here today. I just have to mention, would you just raise your hand, sweet mommy? She came all the way from Ohio to be with me. Isn't that so nice? My own mom. And so in teaching me Sunday school, she taught me a parallel between loving and giving. Right? So she taught me a scripture. One of the first ones I memorized was John 3:16. It said, God so loved that God gave. She taught me that there was a parallel between loving and giving, and that I couldn't say I loved if I wasn't willing to give. And then I was taught early on, I got an allowance of $1 per week. That's scandalous today, right, kids? I don't know how much they get. But I put a dime in my tithing envelope from first grade through fourth grade because that's how much money I got. You understand? I was taught to tithe. I was taught that it was right. But here was the strength for me. I put a dime in, Larry, for those first 3 years. But then I was putting $1 in. Then I was putting in $10. You know what I mean? Then I was putting in $20 and $30 and $40 and $100. And I thought, boy, something about this little dime piece pays off here. I was taught that I was supposed to give, that is, God had blessed me, I was to give back. I had a really striking and moving experience when I went to Riverside Church when I was in seminary and social work school. I wanted to have an internship that would help me see how religious organizations could have impact in the community, and I didn't see it enough. And Riverside was strategically located both in the college town of the Columbia Barnard Union Seminary, Jewish Theological Seminary community, but it was 3 blocks from 125th Street, if anybody knows anything about 125th Street and Broadway. It's Harlem, honey. Harlem, Harlem, Harlem. They want to say Morningside Heights. I promise you it's Harlem. Harlem. And so we had many immigrants from the Dominican Republic, many immigrants from a whole lot of places, very poor families, just getting to the United States. We had a large African-American population, large Puerto Rican population. And so people would come to our church seeking support. It was a very daunting edifice, but some people who could forge their way anyway came for our food pantry and our clothing service. So I had an experience as I was moving from being an intern to being a staff person at the Social Services Ministry of Riverside, where my car got broken into and I went to go get the window fixed. And I watched a woman clad in a bikini try to bathe at a fire hydrant that was broken. She had a very interested audience, as you can imagine, because it was down there where all the car repair guys were, and people were drooling, watching her trying to maintain a little dignity in washing her body. The Sunday after that, I was invited to do the offering ask at Riverside Church. And I asked how many of them had enjoyed the luxury of privacy as they showered that morning. How many of them had an audience, and how many people just had 5 minutes to themselves while they washed their body. How much dignity they felt in being able to wash in private. And the month after that, the Riverside Church started a shower project. People put so much money in that plate because I asked them to. And I told them the story of a woman who was in unfortunate circumstances but wanted to wash. You understand? It's real fundamental to want to wash, isn't it? But she couldn't wash without an audience. Riverside designated a small bathroom with a shower. One woman said, "I will buy you a brand new washing machine. What brand would you like?" Someone else said, "I'll buy you a dryer." And church members by the 20s and 30s and 50s and 80s brought me towels and soap and washcloth and deodorant and toothpaste and toothbrushes. And suddenly we had a closet filled with resources where people who couldn't take a shower could take it. And I said, this is what church is supposed to be, and this is what church is supposed to do. Especially a church endowed by John D. Rockefeller. How about that? How about right in Harlem, we let people take a shower and wash their clothes? I saw what philanthropy and Christian community would do, could do, should do. So that was one of my influences. So sorry for this long answer. I'm going to shorten this next one. You may or may not have noticed that I'm black, but I am. And I believe that I'm living and breathing today because black people figured out early how to survive the barbarism of chattel slavery and the barbarism of the racial oppression that followed that and follows it to this day by being philanthropic. Right? So you imagine that you're a mother and you give birth to a little girl who, as soon as she's weaned, you're in Alabama, but she's sold to Texas. A 3-year-old lands in Texas, the back of a little wagon, without knowing anybody. And a woman on the plantation where that little 3-year-old gets dumped picks your baby up, brings her to her own bosom, feeds her what she feeds the kids who she gave birth to herself. And the reason why black people stayed alive is because we said, whatever I have, I'm going to give to you. Your house gets burned down and you're a sharecropper like me, come live here until me and 5 other neighbors can put another shack up for you. Your son is tar and feathered and you just want some little shred of dignity in a funeral and you don't have 6 cents. The people in your church will either send your kid to college or bury your boy or support your grandma until you have enough. Philanthropy is what enabled us to survive. So I believe in it because I don't think I would stand on these brown legs today unless my ancestors believed in it. Watched my grandmother and my great-grandmother extend themselves to people unrelated to them because I think it helps us to survive. So I'm a black woman and a Christian woman. I believe it's a matter of survival and a matter of the will of God. And it's a privilege to finally be on the side where I can help and support with resources. I don't have a whole lot of my own, but the little bit I have, I want to support. Sorry, that was a real long answer. Yes?
Have you identified as you travel, have you identified how we can get everyone to understand that philanthropy is more than money? Because we have this perception and we don't get out of the box.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting here, looking at one of my links. We're in the links, we're in the Coalition of Young Black Women, we're in the AKA, we're in all these organizations, but they don't get it. They think it's just money. And so we're missing out on many multiple opportunities to have an impact. So do you have any suggestions about how we can do that?
You know, one thing that's so encouraging to me is I'm hearing more and more. I think I'm so glad you brought this up. I think it's very important. It's an identity issue, right? It's how we identify ourselves. It's how we regard our actions and our work and our service. And it's very like many of us to just underestimate and undermine what we do that actually is philanthropic. And we haven't heard the message that says philanthropy is time, talent, and treasure. We think philanthropy is Ford, Rockefeller, Pew, Lilly, and all the rich people and not me. And we don't think about the fact that our synagogue wouldn't have seats or cushions or air conditioning if it wasn't for us. We don't think about the fact that our mosque would not be situated where it is if it wasn't for us, that our church would not have one program if it wasn't for the money that we're giving. We don't ever think of the fact that our volunteerism is worth precious time and money. It's worth so much. So one of the things that I'm seeing more is the emergence of giving circles, which is really informal, sort of non-institutionalized giving, where 6 people who care about the after-school program at the local school get together. Everybody puts their $250 in, and after 2 years, the after-school program has a complete set of encyclopedias, a new jungle gym, a new this, a new that. We're finding that we can give collectively, strategically, and the workshops and the material that's coming out from giving circles is identifying for common folks like us, hey, that's philanthropy. It is time, it is talent, it is treasure. You are very philanthropic because you teach Sunday school. You are philanthropic because you go to your child's school and teach the kids how to do this thing and that thing. You're philanthropic because you feed people every other Saturday. It's not just the big money. And so I feel like the messages are coming across, but not to wide audiences. And I wonder what would happen if we began to think. Please do.
It gave me a great segue. I started a giving circle here in Indianapolis.
Oh, wonderful.
After 100. And we have 152 women who have given $1,000 each. So
Wow. Wow. You are.
And we will give our grant away on June 27th. We're in the process of working through it and teaching women about philanthropy because it is a process of how it works. As a grant maker, you know that. But I would like to see it, and you bring it up very well, a giving circle on a smaller scale. It doesn't necessarily have to be a defined 501c3. It doesn't necessarily have to be a group of 152 women. But it would be wise and investment for this community and people that have common interests to bond together and instead of going out for lunch, spending $25 on lunch and also $25 in a pot.
Yeah.
And watch that pot grow, watch
Yes.
that dime.
Yes.
And I think the rewards would be wonderful to those that do that. And I would encourage it.
Thank you and congratulations. It's wonderful, wonderful work. Oh, that's incredible.
152.
Wow.
You're doing something so right. Thank you for that. That's a model for us. Yes.
Just to touch on what she said earlier, I kind of connect that. I also think that there is, as grant seekers think of philanthropy as as a dollar, we are so often given the message that from the foundation